Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime. I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. Let's talk about math and voting. When it comes to voting, right, math is at its core. So I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about voting theory just a little bit. I'm going to leave some links in the description so you can go more in depth if you want to. And I'm going to talk about things a little bit here and also not only talk about math and voting in and of itself, but things that are surrounding it. Because the truth is, right, voting, it's very much a big part of our society. And it impacts a lot. And there's math all over the place in it. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So, the idea of a vote, right? It's a way to express choice or preference, right? When you're in a group setting. And this could be in everyday life, like choosing a TV show to watch or what type of pizza to eat. Or it could be more large scale, like who's going to be the leader of an entire country for like 4 years, like it is over here in the States. And right, there's math built into it because when you're making, that choice, that preference, when you're expressing that, it's being counted, right? You keep track of it. And when you're expressing it, it's in various ways, right? Because it could be show of hands, it could be through your voice, it could be through a poll or a survey, but the idea is things are being counted. Math is baked into the very idea of voting. And when it comes to the larger scale stuff, there's a lot more to it too, right? So when it comes to like a country, like different countries have different voting systems. Like there's a lot out there. It's kind of wild actually. I wanted to focus in on like our system over here just a little bit and not remotely all of it because it can actually get kind of complicated. And so I wanted to talk about what kind of different types of voting there are out there. Just note some because again, there's a lot out there. But I just wanted to mention a few to give you all like a better idea of things. Like some of you all may know these things, so humor me if you do. And if you don't, it's worth looking into. And again, like I'm going to put some links in the description if you want to dig deeper. Like I have this in particular, I have a link to an open source textbook that I used to use when I was teaching this one math course where we like looked at real world applications, where they actually do have some useful information about voting theory. So for starters, you could have something where it's majority rules, right? Or the majority method, whatever you prefer. And that's the kind of voting where most people are used to, where you have to have above 50%. So, it's just like if you have a group of people, let's say 10, for instance, I have to have, in this case, 6 people. Because, we're dealing with whole numbers in that case. Otherwise, it gets very dark very quickly. Oh, wow, yeah, it does. But yeah, so the idea there is, you need to have most of the people to get most of the vote, right? And then there's things like preference ballots, where, you're looking at different rankings where, you might have a first, a second, and third choice. So not only do you have math involved in like counting the votes overall, but also the rankings. And then you have like plurality, which is largely used over here in the States, where it's not majority rules, which is what I think a lot of us tend to mistake it as. But like here, it's just like, so you're looking at like the rankings, but you're looking at the first rankings like for people and looking at like who got the most votes that are in first place, if that makes sense. There's probably like a more eloquent way to say that, but the idea is with like plurality voting, you don't need to get the majority of people. You just need to beat out everyone else. So basically, like, if I had like 45% of the votes and I'm in like first place and everyone else got less, then I would win, right? That's the idea there. There's some complexities with that. And then, there's a difference between how things work on a state level versus a federal level, right? Because like when we do like our presidential elections, it's a lot different than um, our like state elections, right? Because then we have to deal with the electoral college, and that could be a whole episode by itself. But there's math and how that works too. And here's the thing, right? There's not only like math and how these systems just function in and of themselves, like in terms of existing, but there's math and what they determine, right? Because people are people are the people vote, right? People are part of these systems. They're the people who, oh my God, there are better ways to say what I'm trying to say. So people are determining like the votes, right? But they're also like impacted by it, right? And when it comes to voting, whoever's in those positions of authority, they're the ones who are determining policies, right? They're determining what bills get passed. There's a lot of money involved in politics, right? There's like a lot, right? Like taxes get involved, medicine, insurance, all of that. Which, for the record, everything that I just mentioned could be episodes in and of themselves and probably will at some point or another. But my whole thing is just like, right, whoever's in power, they affect our daily lives, right? Because like I said, they affect things like taxes. They affect things like insurance and like what's protected versus what's not. And our school is impacted. What standards, we need to, pass this or pass that. And, there's math in all of these things and how they function and flow. And it's just all this elaborate system. And again, and I can't stress this enough, like I am just talking about the US. Like I said, there are a lot of voting systems used by a lot of countries. And it's wild. But going back to the US, right, when we consider like who's voting, right, it's complicated because, we're like, okay, the people are choosing this, the people are choosing that, but it's limited because it's like, one, you got people who can vote versus people who can't, right? So you're already eliminating some people, and then like you have people who can vote and do versus people who can vote and don't. That's another thing, right? And that changes over time, and the same with people who can, who can't. Now, it wasn't long ago that people like myself couldn't vote in this country, and that eliminates, part of the population. Like I'm black, and there was a point where black people could not vote, and so it's like there wasn't necessarily people who could represent us, and I'd argue you're still getting that, but that's a whole different thing, right? And then there was a big point where women were not allowed to vote, right? And that's literally half of our population. And not only that, you have to be over 18, right? And then there's so many things that come with all of that, and like having this whole system. And in order to be in those positions to get those votes, there are certain qualifications that have to be met, and math is involved too. Take the presidency. There's surprisingly not a lot that in theory would get in your way, but let's not act like money isn't an active factor in it. But in theory, it shouldn't be. Like basically, the two major requirements are that you are a natural U.S. citizen and that you are over 35. And so there's math in that, and so it's like to get those votes, you have to be on that ticket and have those qualifications met. But again, I argue that money is a big part of that. Money is huge in politics, like I mentioned earlier. But my whole thing that I hope I got across with this video is there's a lot of math in politics. Like, sorry, that was part of this video, not the main point. There's a lot of math in voting, right? There's math involved in its very existence. It wouldn't be a thing without math. And how it's used and who it includes requires math, and how it impacts us all, right? That requires a lot of math. And it's worth considering. It's worth thinking about. Math shows up in so many ways, in so many places, and while math itself is not good or bad, how it is used can be. And again, it's worth considering. So with that in mind, is a reminder, I have some links in the description that you should check out if you want to take a deeper dive into like voting theory and the different kinds of voting systems out there. because there was no way that I was going to be able to cover all that in this video and do it the kind of justice that it deserves. It's just worth thinking that there's not one set way to do that, right? Like we all had to invent it, but the whole thing is just like, you know, math is at its core at the end of the day, and I think that's fascinating. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the future. Professor Prime out.